Welcome everyone today to our special session with Dr. Ruby. Well, I would like to get started since it's 5 after. We're going to talk about the secret language of hearts, compassion, connection, and communication for parents. Dr. Ruby, take it away.
Good morning, and thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here and hopefully share some insightful information that will help you as a parent or guardian or teacher working with children and being able to think about how we communicate with children based on some of the things that we talked about last time, which I'll review in a moment. So we can advance the slide. For those of you who were here last time, this is a quick review. If you weren't here, this is just to give you some background very quickly so that you don't feel lost. And I have a slide over to my left, so I'm not like drifting off. I'm just looking at a different screen. Um, Last time we talked about what happens in the brain with young children and with children as they develop, and how their emotions are handled by students, by children at different age levels, and how emotion influences how they behave. And the takeaway was that behavior is communication. Behavior, if we can reframe how we look at how our children, how our students operate, how they behave, and we can reframe it as communication rather than an individual who's willfully doing something to make our lives terrible. That's not what's happening. Children don't often have the language to explain what they're doing. And so that brings us to what we're talking about today, which is the language of hearts, the language of compassion and connection and real communication, so that we can influence our students, our children, by how we talk to them, how we communicate with them, which is central to our relationships with them. And so I'm going to advance the slide. And so this session was really developed to explore how through our use of language and through our understanding of how behavior is communication, we can raise children who will be compassionate, who will be able to withstand the challenges that they face in life and become resilient, and how we can do that ourselves by becoming more compassionate in our communication. And so we're going to look at strategies today that will foster what we all, I think everybody who would ever come to a session like this has the same goal of having strong, positive connections with children and building strong relationships so that those children can go on and be strong, compassionate people themselves. So that's what we're going to do today. And we can advance the slide. What I hope we'll walk away with, and in full disclosure, as a parent, I didn't know this stuff. So I'm not presenting this as, well, I did this right, and so you should do what I did. I made whatever mistake you made, or you make, I can guarantee you, I made it 10 times over. Okay, because I'm a pretty involved person, and I wanted to do what was best for my children. Unfortunately, that wasn't always what happened. So I'm hoping that this will help you be able to do what I wish I knew when I was a young mother. At the end of this, we want to be able to have some level of mastery of how to talk to our kids, from preschoolers through teens and beyond. And we want to learn that it's important for us to validate what our kids are feeling and not feel like we either have to do one of two things, either fix them, fix our kids, fix their feelings, or dismiss them, get kids to push their feelings aside. Um, We're going to look at some really simple, I say simple, they're simple in design. They're not so simple to execute, but simple strategies where we can transform our language just by the words we use. So, removing you in an accusatory way, like a blaming way, to what we call I messages. And we're going to get into that. And then this seems like another simple thing, but it's very hard to do. Harness the power of listening and listening with the goal of building trusting relationships. And there's a big difference between listening and hearing. We're going to look at that. So we can go to the next slide. Okay, as I alluded before, we learned a lot of things last time, and getting a little bit deeper for as a review, and for those who weren't with us, we learned about what we call the upstairs brain and the downstairs brain and how behavior is communication. And we said, we talked about why kids struggle. So I'm just going to read off the slide for you, because that'll be the easiest way to get my point across. So if you know why a young kid's brain is struggling, okay? So you know that they can't control their emotions. They don't have the words to explain what they're feeling. Um, what do you say in the heat of the moment? Because none of this is pleasant, right? So you have a 4-year-old who's having a meltdown. Not a good scene, especially if it's in a public place. You have a 12-year-old who's being blatantly disrespectful to you, or you have a 16-year-old who just like shuts you out of his or her world. You have an emotional response too. But as the adult, remember, this is not easy. As the adult, what you do in terms of what you say in the 30 seconds, that's a very brief period of time, after one of these events or an event like this happens, is either going to create a bridge or a wall to basically your child's heart. And if you build a wall, it just gets stronger over time. If you build a bridge, it gets stronger over time. But if you build a wall, it's very hard to take down. And unfortunately, most of us as parents or guardians or even teachers choose to build the wall by our actions, not by intention. Okay? So it just happens if we don't know. So let's discover what I like to call the secret language that can transform chaos, which is, by the way, there's a fancy word I'm going to use. It's called entropy. They teach us about it if you take physics in high school or in college. Entropy is the natural order of things, which is like a gas, everything moving all over. So it's chaotic. Chaos happens, but how we deal with it, we can't make chaos not happen. But how we deal with it is what the secret sauce is. So let's see what that is. We can move on. So what we want to do is figure out by the end of this, 45 minutes or so, how we can take challenging conversations that can turn into explosions. We all know that, especially with young children, and use these tools not just to end that chaotic situation that we may be having in the grocery store or outside the school door or in the middle of a family event, but long term. Use language, simple language strategies as tools that are going to build the types of relationships that we want to have with our children or our students, and maybe that some of us wish we had with those adults in our own life. We can move on. So we need to understand what's going on in our kids' world, building on what we talked about last time. And so we need to move beyond just looking at things as being positive or negative, looking at things as being good or bad. Kids are, as they develop, learning how to deal with their own emotions. Just like we have to figure out when we have an interaction with somebody, it could be a spouse or a partner or um, uh, some authoritative person in our lives. We have to sit and like think about like what are we going to say? Hopefully we think about it. What are we going to say? How are we going to navigate this? Because when we don't think about it, that's usually when the trouble happens. Well, we've lived however many years you have been on this earth. We've lived a lot more time and had a lot more experience than our kids do. And kids are feeling these things that we feel, but they've never had the experience of how to get through it before. So we have to understand at some level that there's a lot going on in the mind and the heart of a child as they're trying to figure out how to deal with what is unknown, what is a trigger, what is some kind of chaos to them. Okay? So instead of labeling how they're acting as, oh, they're being good today or they're being bad, we need to go back to focusing on what's underneath the hood. Remember, if you were here last time, we talked about looking under the hood, looking inside. So, what's the root cause? What's driving how they're acting? Because maybe then we can figure out how we want to respond. So, we can go to the next slide. Okay. So, I talked about listening, not hearing. Hearing is just words going in, if your ears work, in your brain and you hear what was said. Listening is paying attention and focusing on the meaning, thinking about what the words are telling you, or looking at behaviors and thinking about what the actions are telling. So listening with empathy means listening to feel and then hopefully understand what the other person is going through. Okay, so listening without interrupting somebody. Believe me, I have problems with that myself, right? Because you in your effort to want to help, you want to butt in and tell people you want to help, you want to fix them, right? We're not talking about fixing. So we're listening to understand, so we have to listen without interrupting. That if we're not interrupting, if we're really listening, then we can get closer to seeing what their perspective is, how the child, believe me, this works with spouses and other people as well, but how what their perspective is on something. This isn't easy. That's why I put on the slide, you have to work at this. Okay? When we do have, after we listen, when we engage, when we speak, using what are called open-ended questions, okay, rather than now telling them how to fix it or fixing them. So things like, tell me more about that, to engage them, to give you more information. So to invite them. So you listen to try to understand, and then you ask for more information rather than trying to fix the problem. You can only do that if you plan for it. Now, I'm going to give you a quick little vignette here. Um, as a teacher, when students would give an answer, and I taught in the beginning of my career, I taught young children, kindergarten, first, second, third grade, and kids would give an answer or would say something, and I was trained to always to listen and then to always say, "What makes you say that? Why did you say that?" Okay, you get a lot of information when you give a student or your own child the opportunity. So I did this all the time. Well, the vignette is so one night we're at the dinner table, at my family, and one of my kids said something, and I said, "What makes you say that?" And the other child said, "Mom, can you stop pretending you're at school?" Because because that's what you do with your kids. But I still did it. I just changed my words because it helped me transition what I was doing with students at school to get more information from them so that I would be a better listener. Because you want your kids to like not have problems. You would be the helicopter mom and fix everything. That doesn't set them up for success down the road. So listening with empathy creates what we want in our homes and in our classrooms. And that's a safe place for expression. By doing this, you are teaching your child, your student, that they are in a safe place with you where they can open up their hearts to tell you things. And this pays off as they get older because we want our kids to be able to feel safe and come and tell us things. And the same thing happens in a school environment. And so we can go to the next slide. We have to try and not be judgmental. So on this slide, it says validating feelings, acknowledging emotions without judgment. This is a very powerful strategy. And so the example I'll give you, if somebody goes, "This is so hard, I can't do it," instead of going, "Oh, I'll help you," or "I'll do it," or "You're no good," or "You should know how to do that," or some things that just kind of fall out of our mouths when we're frustrated. Acknowledging the emotions that a child is having without trying to fix them because we want them to become independent. We're not going to be there all the time with most of our children. I mean, there are children who do need us for very, very, very extensive periods of time. We're talking in general. Um, and by validating that something, you're not going to go, "Oh yeah, it's really hard. This is like you're never going to get through this." Saying something like, "Yeah, you have to work at this." Like acknowledging it, like this is reality. And not in a sarcastic tone. "This is reality, kid. You just got to work at it." Like, yes, you have to work hard at this. And then statements, validating that you understand. You were listening, so you heard what they said and you're showing empathy through your validation. So a statement like, "Sounds like you're really feeling frustrated." Okay, so you're frustrated. I know that you're frustrated. You're not dismissing it or telling them to dismiss it like, "Well, don't be so frustrated about this. This is just, you can just do this." So you have to plan for this type of interaction. It just doesn't happen. If it happened, we wouldn't even be having this webinar because we'd all be doing it. Okay, so we can go to the next slide. This does not mean that you have to be a sacrificial lamb, so to speak, for your children or your students. You also need to be able to communicate your needs. And this is where the I messages come in. So you need to do that in a respectful way because we are modeling for our students, right? So if we're not respectful in expressing what our needs are, you can bet your last, well, we can't say penny because we don't have them anymore, your last dollar, I think that's going to be around for a while, that they are not going to be respectful to you either. It's a two-way street. When we're disrespectful in the way we speak or communicate what our needs are, we're modeling that that's okay. So when you express yourself to students or children, your own children, using an I statement, I'm going to give you a model of that, to express your feelings and needs. You're doing it without blame. So you're not using you as a trigger. Think about when you're in a situation, somebody says, "Well, you're the one that wanted the window open. And then you didn't close it. And now we have water all over the place because it rained. You did it, right?" You just is like a weapon when there's emotions involved. So here's an example. So your child has not picked up the toys and put them away the way it's supposed to happen in your house. That happens in everybody's house. And instead of saying, you didn't put those toys away again, I told you that when you are done with that, you need to put them back in the toy box. So you're going to be a lot more successful if you're using empathy and being respectful and saying, I really feel overwhelmed when there are toys everywhere. Because that's the truth, by the way, right? So I really feel overwhelmed when I come in this room and the toys are all over the place. So could you please help me put them away? And that doesn't mean that you need to get down on your hands and knees and do all the work, but you're showing respect for your child. You're not giving the you, which just shuts them down, right? Sets that limbic system into like chaos, and they have a amygdala hijack that we talked about, and now they're not going to think, and you're going to start a little war. So an I statement is, and there's a little example on this slide, which comes from good therapy. I feel, and then how do you feel? I feel overwhelmed. I feel sad. I feel frustrated. You name it. How do you feel? I feel whatever because, not because you, because describe the situation when this happens, and then express your needs. Okay, so on the left side of the slide it said express yourself. So you express your needs, so you tell your needs in a very positive, respectful way. Okay, we can go to the next slide. So this is small, but there are on the slide there are websites where there's a lot of information. But what I want to talk to you about right here is, in whatever situation we're dealing with children, we're trying to help them grow into independent people who can be successful in their own lives. So we want to build them up, not tear them down. Stuff happens. They have bumper stickers. They don't say stuff, but stuff happens. And it's always going to happen. So we need to figure out how we can, when stuff happens, be in dealing with things in a positive way and not in a way that's going to diminish the self-worth of our child. So we're going to focus on growth. And it says the goal of compassionate conversations is to build people up, not tear them down. So these are some positive language alternatives that I'm going to get to help you. And it says on the slide, tame your child's tantrum. So if a child is tantruming, they're not doing it because they decided to say, wow, things look like they're going really great for mom or dad or my teacher. I think I want to like spice it up a bit. I'm going to have a tantrum. This is not happening. There's something that's affecting the child. There's something they want. There's something that they feel. There's some kind of pain, and they tantrum because they don't have the language or the skill, even if they're a little bit older, because they've been doing this and becomes a habit. So saying to somebody who's in that situation, calm down, usually isn't like very effective. But how about just changing that around and saying, how can I help you? I see you're really frustrated. How can I help you? Well, I tell you, the reaction that you usually get when you do that is like shock. They just like stop because how can I help you? They don't even really know at that point how they can help you. How about so now they're crying and you go, stop crying. How effective is that? Change it into, I see this is hard for you. You could go, how can I help you? This is hard. Describe the situation. Or how many times have we said stuff like this? Maybe a child falls down and is bleeding. You're okay, you're okay. Well, they're not okay. If they were okay, they wouldn't be bleeding and crying, right? So just change it up by one word. Are you okay? This gives them the opportunity to put words to what they're feeling and helps diffuse the situation a bit. Um, Now, this I can tell you works from the classroom and also works in the home. Things are getting loud, things are getting, a little chaotic. You go, be quiet. How effective is that? The using it's I have on the slide they have, can you use a softer voice? What I have found and what other teachers will tell you in the classroom, and it works in the home as well, is when things get loud, get quiet. And when you talk in a really quiet voice, it doesn't work 100%, but it quiets things down because they want to hear, like you might be giving away a lollipop or something. They want to hear what you have to say. Stop yelling, and then take a deep breath. And I'm not going to read through all of these. You'll have this slide set, and you also have the web address, which has a lot more information on it. Rocketmama.com. Okay, so Rocket Mamas. Um, on the other side of the slide, there's 7 mindful parenting tips that you can start today, and this is from themindfulmom.com. And we talked about this last time, so this is a repeat for some of us, but knowing what your own triggers are. So if you know that when your students, and I'll just use their children, don't put things away, that triggers you, and you like fly off the handle, you flip your lid, then you need to be aware of that and and be preemptive. Um, we're going to talk next time about mindful breathing, but using mindful breathing, I talked about this a little bit, model the behavior that you want. If you don't do it, if you can't behave in a respectful way, sorry, I just have to put it out there, then please don't expect your kids to do it because they're modeling you. This is an important one. Somehow it's hard for adults to do, but when you mess up, you make a mistake, apologize. Giving an apology to your own child or to students in the class, I've done this multiple times. I've talked to multiple teachers who find that when they make a mistake, instead of trying to cover it up, you just tell the kids, you are modeling positive risk-taking and accountability. So apologize. Nobody's perfect, and it's okay. That's not the goal here. Um, it's about being human, and humans make mistakes. And so you're not setting yourself up as an authority figure that they're supposed to try to emanate and be like or emulate, when that's just not even reality. Um, Knowing when you reach your limits, knowing when you're going to blow a fuse or flip your lid is important. And we're going to talk next time about what to do when that happens. And then looking at every single day that we have on the face of this earth as a growth and learning experience. We are all works in progress, the adults and the children. So these two websites, Rocket Mama and the mindfulmom.com, have some really what I find to be very helpful resources, and these are just two of them. So for those of you who are parents, it's if you're a mom, if you're a dad, same thing. People who are in childcare centers or therapeutic centers or classrooms, there's resources there for you as well. Okay, so let's move on. So the whole idea that I've been talking about is how we talk to our children should be really framed on building them up and not tearing them down. The language should be positive. So it's about so we're going to listen to learn, and then we're going to choose words that will help our students grow into the human beings that we want them to be, that will be encouraging, uplifting, that will build positive, a sense of self. And like I said before, by engaging in this positive communication, we are communicating that we are safe and that the home is safe, the classroom is safe. And this is going to be a very, very important as children grow to keep the lines of communication open and not have your children not tell you about things that they really should be telling you about. So instead of saying things like no throwing, go sit in timeout, talking about like what really is behind you not wanting them to do that. Kids don't know this stuff. We think like that they have the same perspective as we do, and they don't. Um, so I'm not going to read the slide to you, but I will go with the one about not throwing, go sit in timeout. You know, throwing isn't really safe. I'm going to put this, I'm going to take this toy away. You're never going to see it again. I'm going to give it to the garbage man. Like this is not a positive thing. So I'm going to take this toy away, just to keep things safe for now. And then we can try it a little later or whatever, tomorrow, the next day. Um, when and I'm not going to read this through, but um, that's enough. The two of you just get out of my sight. Just go to your room. Get out of here. Like, where's the learning? Where's the learning? Does that feel safe? Does that feel like the home or the classroom is a safe place? So remember we talked about calling it what it is and acknowledging it, putting words to the situation and not being judgmental. So this, you know, saying, wow, it really looks like it's kind of hard for the two of you to play together right now. So we're going to have separate playtime for the next 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever it is, and then we can come back and try again. Um, that this is I'm telling you, there are so many lovely websites. This is from our Daily Mess. I think that's a lovely name for a website because it aptly describes some of what happens, in day-to-day living, ourdailymess.com. And then, this is from another site, giving you just more examples of instead of saying things that are judgmental and tear people down, how can you, pull it up. Lift it up, lift the children up. So next slide, please. When we use language that's accusatory, people don't feel understood. Think about yourself as an adult. When somebody says, you know, like if you have a job and somebody says, you never get your work in on time. I mean, like the worst week. You haven't got, maybe they have sick people at home. Maybe they've had a death in the family. Oh, well, maybe their dog passed away. That's like, you think that's a trivial thing? That takes a whole family down. I just experienced that with one of my granddogs. It was devastating watching my three grandchildren and their parents go through that. And it disrupts going to the vet, having to put a dog down. These are like things that happen in daily life and they affect people's emotions. So shifting from accusation to understanding is critically important. So this on this slide, you can see that it goes back to that I message piece that we talked about. So this is a review on that. Instead of saying you always, you never, blah, 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 change to I feel, or you can use the example that's on this slide. It seems or it feels. So you're taking the judgment away, you're taking the accusation away, and you are being positive in a way that will typically result in the child feeling encouraged to share, to open up. And when we get to the end of the session, one of the big takeaways is for lifelong relationships, I'm going to call you back to this at the end. We want to open the lines of communication and get that opening to get wider and wider and wider over the student or the child's development so that we can have a fully open relationship in terms of sharing and communication when they get into those teenage and adult years. So next slide. I think that this is really an important concept for us to understand, especially in the way things are going in the world today. It's like everybody wants to win. Everybody wants to um, be the best. Everybody has to get a trophy. Everybody has to be the smartest. It's okay to just be who you are. It really is. You're good enough. Because when people appreciate young children, middle schoolers, teenagers feel valued for who they are, that they're good enough the way they are, that sets them up for taking risks at trying harder things and bettering themselves and not feeling diminished. So, in this, it's about your work ethic. It's about your accomplishments in terms of who you are. So recognizing your child may not get high honors. Your child may not get the Outstanding Student of the Year award. That's okay. How they do every single day, the accomplishments that they make every single day, the work that they put into doing what they're trying to do every single day, if we can remember to acknowledge that, acknowledge them for who they are, we're going to build really strong, resilient kids. So instead of saying, things like, oh, you're so smart, or in term beyond intelligence in athletics, you're the best person on the football team or the basketball team. When you see them, say, doing homework and they're done. This is so simple. Wow, I'm really proud of how you stuck to doing all those math problems for 15 minutes. That looked like hard work. You're praising the fact that they stuck to it and that they finished the homework, not whether they got all the problems right or they're the smartest kid math in the math class or any of that. So these are things that you don't have to wait for a contest or an award ceremony. These are things that you can do on a daily basis. It even works with partners and spouses. So think about this. Just the simple act of, if you, I'm going to put, this is my experience. Um, I made dinner, we ate dinner, and then my husband starts cleaning the dishes off, so that they can go in the dishwasher. And if you want that to happen frequently, then you can acknowledge that accomplishment and say something like, "Wow, I really appreciate that you did that for me. That really helps a lot." Boom, done. Okay. Transfer that. It actually works, but that's a true story. Um, but transfer that to the little things that children will do and view it as an accomplishment and a step forward, and then use your compassionate parenting communication to acknowledge that. So let's not make our kids feel inadequate if they don't get the big prize, or only praise them if they do get a big prize. Let's acknowledge their accomplishments throughout the day. And even going back to what we talked about with, let's say, the picking up the toys. So if you get them they actually pick up a few toys, not all of them, and put them away. We want them to do that you want them to do that on a more regular basis. Acknowledge it. Acknowledge it in a positive way. Say, wow, I appreciate the fact that you really, you remembered to pick up the toys. I'll help you pick up then he said, but I wish you had picked up the rest of them. You only picked up half of them. I appreciate how you picked up those toys. Um, Let me help you get the rest of them. Okay, that's a nicer way of saying that you didn't get them all. All right, we can move on. Look at these pictures. You've probably seen the picture of the child who's in third place, being so ecstatically happy over third place. It's been shown on the internet bazillions of times. But what this represents is the child in first place doesn't seem to be so happy about that first place prize. Actually, I think it's a girl. Whoever it is, looks kind of miserable and bewildered because the kid in third place is ecstatic. I'm going to just guess that this is a child who gets encouraged and gets positive language messages when he does little things along the way. And so he's proud. He has a good sense of self. In the picture on the upper right, I put this here because if we are compassionate parents and we engage in some of the strategies that I've talked about, and we're trying to build resilient, caring people, they may end up being like this. This was in an actual race where the guy in the green shorts who was being held up, he fell. And the other two gentlemen have such compassion for humanity that it wasn't about winning. They stopped and they carried that guy over the finish line. What's important in life? And then down at the bottom, this poor young woman, she didn't win, and she is exhausted, and she's not feeling, she's not, doesn't look jubilant yet. Whoever that guy, he's holding it and giving her feedback for what she did. So this is what this is all about. It's about respect and modeling care and compassion for our kids. Next slide. So one of our big goals here is to understand behavior and not punish it. So instead of punishing, ask your children why they did something in the way that they did it. So was there a misunderstanding, or is there some need that they have that wasn't met? Because when you understand the behavior, that's when there's collaboration. So you're not trying to fix your child or fix your student, but you're working together to find a solution because you want the child to be able to go forward in life and figure out their own solutions. So behavior is communication. Next slide. When we're talking to children or students in our classroom, we want to be describing the behavior. When you didn't do, when the toys didn't get picked up, that made me feel whatever. Not you. You're lazy, you're this, you're that. Just focus on describing behaviors instead of labeling the child, and use language that empowers the child so that they don't feel like you don't love them, you don't care them, and that they have no self-worth. Next slide. So this is a slide that gets more into what I was just talking about. And so I provided this chart which gives what the positive problem behavior is, and what the positive opposite of that behavior would be, and what the labeled praise would be. So I'm going to just go down to being bossy. So being bossy is a problem behavior, especially in a family. If you have one child that just wants to like boss everybody else around, and it gets ugly. So that's the problem behavior. The positive opposite behavior that you want is that you want them to take turns. So the labeling praise would be if you watch and you listen, you'll catch them doing the behavior that you want and saying something like, wow, I think it's so awesome when you guys all take turns like that. Okay. So these are simple things, but we had a slide that said you have to plan them. So how to avoid labeling your child, the other chart that I provided is instead of this, try this. So I don't know about you, but I had some whiny kids. Um, what child wants to hear, "You're such a whiner"? Hold on to that because that becomes part of who they are. You're such a whiner. Can we just say, "I see you're upset. Would you like a hug?" And then get into the why is the child whining? Um, Lots of kids that were preschoolers and young children during COVID didn't have a lot of social interaction because they were kind of quarantined at home when we weren't going to school, et cetera. Those kids are now in first, second, third grade. And some of them are very shy. And calling a kid shy or telling them not to be shy is not a positive thing for their self image and their growth. And so acknowledge you can see that they're shy. I mean, it's pretty obvious they're not interacting. And instead of calling them out and labeling them as you're shy, saying things like, I'm noticing that you're quiet. It can really take a while to feel comfortable with new people or in a new place. It's a change in mindset. You're not labeling the child, you're labeling the behavior. Next slide. Alluded to this a little bit before. Apologize when necessary. It's really okay for adults to apologize to children, and it's really necessary for us to be able to own what we do and apologize when you made a mistake. So, you're going to yell. You're going to do all the things that we don't want to do. It happens. But when you do it, if you can take it back through an apology, it doesn't change what happened, but it changes how we're thinking about it. Apologizing is okay and necessary for adults. Next slide. Um, so I don't want you to think that I'm saying, oh, anything goes. Just let kids do whatever they want and just make sure you're like a powder puff. That is not what I'm saying. I'm saying that we need to think about how we set boundaries and set them with compassion. And so we can combine firmness and setting boundaries with kindness. And if you have kindness, but you don't have firmness, then that's permissive. And that is not what I'm advocating. Firmness without kindness really builds fear in students. And I know that you had Ross Green on last night, and he's really an expert in that. Um, we don't want fear-based discipline. That doesn't build strong adults, and it doesn't build good relationships between parents and children or teachers and children. Kids need to have that combination of us being kind and compassionate with setting boundaries or being firm at the same time in order for them to develop the way we hope our children will develop. And we can go to the next slide. So setting boundaries with firmness and kindness really takes everything that we've been talking about and folds it into our behavior. Um, I don't know about you, but I've had that kid who has a tantrum in the grocery store, and it is embarrassing. And if you say, "You're embarrassing me," um, the child takes that in and it becomes part of who they are. They're an embarrassment. You didn't say you're an embarrassment, although some people might say that. But when you say, "You're embarrassing me," that becomes part of who the child is. So when they hear that as they grow up, that impacts their behavior, whether you realize it or not. And so on the slide, it's what are some of the things that become part of their who they are? They may feel like they need to be a people pleaser because they don't want to be an embarrassment to anybody. They strive for perfection, which is not a healthy thing to have as your MO. They may avoid being in social situations because they don't want to be an embarrassment to other people. They develop trust issues and they can feel embarrassment. Okay, so these are things to think about. And if we have compassion and we combine firmness and kindness, we can do that less, hopefully, or not at all. Avoid doing it. So the words that you say to your child become the voice they hear. This is a really powerful statement. So we want to say things like our in the picture on the right side, like you can do hard things. That becomes their inner voice. Then they take on challenges. They don't quit. Um, uh, when you smile, it makes my day. That becomes their inner voice. They they know that this gets into emotional contagion, right? I'm proud of you. We want our children to know that we care and we love them. That becomes part of who they are. I love you on your good days and your bad days. That's unconditional love, right? That's creating a safe environment. I can come home and tell my parents, or I can and I can tell my teacher, I can tell my guardian, my grandmother, whoever, because I know that they love me how I am. I'm good enough. Um, I believe in you. So this slide is really important because what we say to our children becomes their inner voice. Next slide. Um, Setting boundaries and compassion again, firmness and kindness. If you pressure or bribe your children to get them to do things, guess what? You already know this. They're looking for the bribe. They're not going to do it until they get the reward, or they learn that pressure and bribe gets things, and that's how they behave. If this is one that people have challenged me on, but I'm just going to put it out there. If you are constantly telling me, apologize to them, go tell them you're sorry for what you did. They don't even understand what they did. And then they're going to go apologize. But we do force children to say they're sorry. Without understanding what happened, probably not the best thing in the world to do. But what psychologists tell us children learn from that is to always expect apologies or resources from other people. And that's really a challenging way to go about your life because it's not going to happen that way. So there's a lot of research on this, but um, think about when you're demanding your children to make an apology. Do they even understand what happened and what they're apologizing for? Next slide. One of the things that we want to have as an end result is that we're teaching children to have this open communication with us as adults and get to the point where we can problem solve things together in the home or in the classroom. And so when there's conflict, well, rather than go to your room, do this, do that, do the other thing, we can invite the children in and help them to find the solution that works best for the context in our family or our classroom and brainstorming ideas together and coming to something. This is a life skill. And it also creates a more harmonious home and makes it a safer place for kids to be. And the next slide.
Dr. Ruby, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just want to say for a minute, for people who have to leave right at the hour, there is an evaluation link in the chat if people would grab that. But we've got a few more slides to do.
Yeah, we're almost done. And so these are some practical tips. Try it, and I'd recommend if you're going to try to practice this, copying the slide or writing it down and posting it someplace. Um, Respond calmly and empathetically. And the example is when your child throws a tantrum or a kid throws a tantrum in a classroom. Of course, keeping everyone safe. Um, Try to navigate sibling rivalry when we don't, that rivalry can stay with them forever if we don't figure out how to look at something that is a naturally occurring thing. Talked about chaos and entropy, and figuring out how do we navigate with the child to make it a positive situation when children disagree or there's an argument over an object like a toy. And handling difficult conversations about toys, chores, and responsibilities at home through positive language. These are real life things that happen to us every single day in our homes, and we can use the strategies that we talked about today to help those be better. Finally, on the next slide, where the whole thing, the reason we're talking about this is because we want to build strong relationships. Words matter. Words matter. And we can only be compassionate parents or caregivers and have our children grow up to be compassionate by using positive, compassionate communication, because it's what's going to help children to understand relationships, to become empathetic, and it's going to create stronger relationships, stronger bonds. It will help our children to and ourselves to become more emotionally intelligent and to develop ourselves as well as our children to develop mechanisms for coping with the stresses that are part of daily life. We can't make that go away. It seems like we just get more, but we need to know how to navigate it. And words have the power to shape who a child becomes. So if we communicate in some of the ways that we've discussed today, and we try to listen to understand instead of listening to fix or tell, we can create the type of bond and relationship with our child that's going to result in developing stronger trust and a sense of love in your family, love in the classroom. And the way you talk to your children or your students becomes part of their DNA. It's their inner voice. So make sure that kids that you're entrusted with don't start seeing themselves and who they are through words that are devaluing. Every child is precious, and we have a responsibility to help them to come to understand that. And so, next slide. So, I'm going to read this to you. Listening earnestly to anything your children want to tell you, no matter what. If you don't listen eagerly to the little stuff when they're little, you can bet that last dollar that they will not tell you about the big stuff when they're bigger. Because for kids, it's all big stuff. Next slide. The next time we meet, we're going to talk about um, what I call an emotional superpower. And that's we're going to talk about mindfulness and some tools that will help us as adults and ultimately help our children. So today was about communication, and next time is about mindfulness tools. So I hope that this was helpful to somebody. Um, I know that I wish that I knew about it before my kids were grown and flown, but I offer it to you as something that you can try in your home and see how it works.